Go. All right. Well, welcome everybody. This is the continuation of our small and medium business strategy resource series. We did our first one last month here in January. This is the second half of that same topic around donut design for business. And again, this whole series is really built from requests that we heard loud from small and medium businesses in 2023, that they were looking for strategy resources for how to implement some of these more sustainable practices in ways that made business sense for their company. Like how these are great lofty ideas. How do we actually do this in today's world, in the economy that we live in today, with the context that we have today? And so we're organizing this brief sprint of educational materials with that in mind, and again, kicked this off last month. Just for reference for folks, if you weren't here with us last time around, or if you were here with us last time around and you need a refresher on that, we can drop in the chat the link to the recording from last time, so that you'll see that there. That's up and live, and we will have more of that posted on our own websites, so more details there to come. If you want to stay up to date with any of all of that, please, by all means, follow us on LinkedIn, subscribe to our newsletter, and we'll make sure to get you all of that information there. In addition to, since you registered for today, I will make sure to get folks copies of the various resources that are shared during the conversation. So perk of being here in the audience today is that you get first follow-up from everything. Just to get a sense, folks, context on things now that we have, I think, everybody through the Zoom door. I believe you should have reactions available. And so just to get a sense of where folks are coming into the conversation, if you were in the last conversation, if you're there in January and/or you are generally familiar, have heard of Doughnut Design for Business, if you could go ahead and do that fast forward reaction, just to get a sense from folks how everyone is doing. If this is your first time with the content, and it's like, or even if you were here last time around, you're like, yeah, Chris, I could really use a refresher, then go ahead and throw over the slow reaction for us, just so we get a sense of how folks need us to go in this conversation. Okay, got a little bit of mix coming in. Cool. So it looks like most folks have some context, but we'll go ahead and make sure that we keep it in there. All right. So thank you everybody for that. If you want to go ahead, share where you are joining us from today. I know most folks are generally in the Pittsburgh area, but I had a few folks reach out globally from where they were going to be participating from. Feel free to drop your information in the webinar, in the Zoom chats, LinkedIn handles, and other things. It's a good way to network here in the peanut galleries. And even in the digital events, might as well connect with each other as humans. So, hey, back California. Well, Bernard, thank you for joining us. What is still early for a West Coast day then. All right. So just to put in context, for a brief recap for folks who haven't seen it, but also for folks last time around, just to make it a bit more explicit than what we went through last time. The concept for donut economics, the idea for thinking around it, is thinking about living within the ecological ceiling of what the world can sustain, and above the mutually agreed upon societal, social foundation that we've all agreed through various international agreements, such as the Sustainable Development Goals and a variety of other declarations and doctrines that we have around there. Like, what do we expect from each other? What's fair, right? So that space between is the safe and just space for humanity to thrive. And by most measures, from the various disciplines that are researching this and keeping track, we are both falling short of that societal foundation of life's essentials. We are leaving people behind, and we are overshooting in a variety of different factors multiple of the planetary boundaries. So I'm probably not bringing shocking news to say that the world is facing multiple crises. You probably already knew that. This just helps put it a bit in context for you around, okay, what does this mean for an economy? Should we focus on growth, or should we focus on thriving, right? And how does that difference in mindset really frame how we interact and work with each other and lead our businesses? And so some of the ideation in this tool, and you'll notice a slightly different approach in this tool versus the one that we used last time around. So I try and bridge it a little bit in this one, and I'll call out where those differences are. If you want to follow along at home, this one is the rapid donut mapping. So feel free to utilize that tool. But the idea here is thinking around taking sticky notes and flagging where is your business making a positive impact on these various vectors, right? Where are you helping bring humanity in alignment into the donut space? And also thinking on the negative side, where are your business operations, your products, your services? Where is that your lobbying efforts, right? Just the way that you operate, your financing, what have you? How is that perhaps pushing society out or further away from that safe and just space for humanity to thrive? And then finally, so those are the impacts, how the company is impacting others. There is also the other side of it that you want to make sure that you're thinking about, like, okay, great, we exist in a market, we exist in a world. How is your business impacted by these other different vectors that are out there, right? So if you're thinking on the planetary boundary side, if you think on the societal foundation side, where are those that are causing either risks or other matters of grave importance to you, impacting your business in one way or another? Even if you don't necessarily have an operation or doing anything, or it's still something that impacts you. To give an example and make this a bit more explicit, I think most folks are in the goods industry, goods space, making things. And so here's an example that Doughnut Economics Action Lab did with a goods company. And the participants went around and flagged a number of different spaces where they said, hey, you know, we work with organic production, and so we're helping pull on the biodiversity side, we're helping to pull that in, right? At the same time, we truck things around a whole lot, right? And so that is contributing to air emissions, right? We offer equal pay, right? We make sure that we're treating people equitably. And so that is pulling the gender gap closer, right? Other things that they flag, they're like, hey, maybe we don't have a direct impact on it, but it certainly impacts us, would be things like political instability, right? Or maybe where there is alignment, things like, hey, we do intense irrigation. We use water a lot for our processes in a plant, out in the field, what have you. And so we are also impacted by freshwater withdrawals that are happening out in the markets. And so thinking about those aspects back and forth, right? Not going to turn us into a Zoom whiteboard for this particular one, but would love folks, if you could just take a moment and think about your own business, right? Think about the business that you operate in. What are the areas where you positively or negatively impact the market around you, the globe that we all inhabit, right? Where are the areas of the things, what are the things that are creating a risk or an impact for you? We'll give folks a moment to think about this. If you could, would love to see thoughts from folks in the chat. Go ahead, throw those in there. Again, if you want to go back to the ideas, you know, what's positively impacts that your business is creating in the economy, or what are some negative impacts that your business is creating in the economy, or vice versa, what are some risks or impacts for your business that are of social or ecological origin, right? How are those pressures affecting you? So go ahead, take a moment, think about your business. Where do you fall on those operations? Because this will be important later. These are the kind of why moments. Why should we care, right? Why does this make a difference to your business? And so, again, if folks feeling brave, I would encourage you to share your ideas. Here again, the chat won't go out with others, but would encourage folks to share, what you're thinking in terms of how is your business impacted by these things? How is your business impacting others? Because at the end of the day, if you're looking for a lightning rod, if you're looking for, where should you focus in on, like why should we care about this, making any change, it helps to have something to pull back to. So awkward moment of silence for 10, 15 seconds, give folks a moment to think. Cool. We'll keep the chat open for folks to continue to add in there as we go. And again, an example from a services company in there too, just in case helpful for folks. We'll have, again, a copy of this in the recording for references. So in terms of things we covered last time that we won't dive into as much this time around, is that idea of thinking around the current economic models, which tend to be very focused on degenerative, divisive aspects, drivers in the economy, and others which could be a more regenerative setup, right? So right now, a lot of the focus is on how much financial value can we extract from this enterprise, whereas if we were in a more donut economic thinking type of economy, the organization will be thinking around, and the people in the organization will be thinking around how many benefits can we generate in the way we design this enterprise. And so getting folks to think more in lines on those and how to transition to that, right? So a little bit of recap here from last time. The pieces here that we had some very practical points that were raised last time. We're like, okay, so how do we actually do this in a business? Like, how do you make a business plan? How do you put this together? Those are important. That's an important hat to wear. That's an important way to think. We will need that here for today's conversation toward the later part. In the interim, I would encourage folks to take a page from Albert Einstein, suspend that thinking, because we cannot solve problems with the same thinking we use to create them, right? So if that thinking creatively, if that suspending practicality is not you, it's totally fine. We're all wired different ways. If that isn't you, find colleagues that do think differently that way, or find a trusted advisor, find some disinterested party in the effort to be able to soundboard that with, or other key stakeholders that are interested, that are able to think creatively in that way, and collaborate together on that to think about, how do you suspend practicality to think about these more creative approaches? How do you get the long-term thinking, that culture of courage to put these ideas out there? The other piece that we touched on last time was, again, really visualizing your business as part of that thriving economy, right? That regenerative and distributed by design, right? Imagining, visualizing actually your business being part of it. And then the most ambitious, the most transformative ideas for getting there, right? And again, thinking about listening to other stakeholders, the many voices that can help you in that way. We won't spend a lot of time on this one, because again, this was a lot of the activity last time around, about that idea of coming up with those transformative ideas, right? Part of the challenge that we discussed last time around was that often right now, business as usual, again, is designed to maximize margins, dividends, maximize extracting that financial value out to whomever the owners of that organization are. And thinking about how do we design business differently, and that takes really getting into some of the deep design layers of that business in order to set it up in a way that is more regenerative, that is distributive. And so those deeper layers that we went through last time around were purpose, networks, governance, ownership, and finance, right? And again, kudos to Marjorie Kelly for collaborating with Doughnut Economics Action Lab to help bring these layers of thinking together. This is the model that we went through. We went through a model like this one last time around. There's a slight variation this time. In the compressed version we went last time around, it was current state on your left-hand side, and then on the right-hand side was future state. This one, if you need that step-by-step linear logic approach for yourself or for colleagues, this series of canvases might be more effective, thinking explicitly on one canvas just about current business design, right? Thinking through each one of those, and then in the future one, we'll get, in the next one, we'll get to the future design. To recap some of those questions that we went through before on analyzing your current business design, right? And thinking about what are the ways that it is a block or enabler to these transformative ideas that you're trying to implement, right? So on the purpose side, what is the gap between your company's stated purpose and its day-to-day culture and actual operational impacts, right? Are there transformative ideas you cannot pursue because it is considered unfeasible or is not seen as a strategic priority for one reason or another? Networks, right? And these are often more different and diverse than we're thinking about. How are you, how collaborative are you to be able to work with your industry peers, your suppliers, right? Or other broader commercial partners. So intra-industry collaboration or inter-sector collaboration. Can you always pursue long-term committed and open partnerships, right? How robust, how resilient are those networks that you're working in? Are you, within the networks that you're participating in, are you able to advocate and advance regenerative and distributive transformative ideas through those? Governance, and thinking about how does your board, how does your leadership team, whoever are making the final policy decisions for the company, how are they making trade-offs between ecological, social, and financial goals? Which stakeholders do or do not have a say in key decisions? Which decision-making processes treat transformative ideas favorably, right? Versus how we might look at the current status quo challenges. And how transparent can you be about the impacts, about your operations, about your finances? Think about ownership, right? How does ownership shape the kinds of strategies and ideas that your business is actually able to pursue in the first place, right? Are there just some stuff like, yeah, no, the way that our ownership is structured, like that's just a non-starter idea, right? Like being clear on that is helpful part of flagging, like, what is the current design, right? What expectations do owners have of ecological, social, financial performance of the business? And how long are those owners committed to the business? Most of the folks online, I think, have fairly long-term owner involvement, but there might be those that you're working with who are not. Finances. How do expectations on margins determine the kind of things that you can pursue? Do you have a portfolio of approaches where different types of projects, again, are finance is toggled in different directions, or is everything held to some absolute maximum bar, or minimum bar, I should say? How do processes and requirements for capital expenditures determine what things you can invest in these transformative ideas? And how do dividends or exit expectations? Again, I think most of the owners here are long-term, most of the investors are long-term, but you might be dealing with someone who are not. How do they enable or hinder the ability of your business to pursue transformative ideas? So if you start mapping these out in your current business landscape, in your current business design, it will help you identify what are those key main drivers that you have to deal with, right? Like, what are the main blockers of all the things? Which ones are really the root blockers? Which ones are really the root enablers, or the main blockers, the main enablers? Here's an example from a goods company. So that was, again, looking at that first stuff that we may have touched on last time, but a bit more in depth to line it out there. Now, thinking about how do you move forward? This is where we get to some of the fun parts. Everyone's participation in here for the day. We'll take a page from what we did last time around, those transformative ideas. If you're working on this at home, you can go ahead and pull up that transformative ideas canvas that we used last time, set it next to this future business design canvas. Along the top bits, we'll put those transformative ideas that you came up with. And then we'll use that to really map out this future design of the business, right? How might you redesign this? And again, along the top, keep in mind there the enablers and the blockers from that current design of business. So I know we didn't do that last time around, but if you're following along at home, think through those. The way to think about future design. So again, same 5 layers, right? Thinking about if you were to write your desired purpose from a donut perspective, rather than a financial perspective, what would it be? Right? What would the purpose of your business be? Which of those ecological or social challenges could you potentially solve? Are there strategies that currently aren't feasible that would be? And it might be heresy to ask, but what will you let go of over the next 5 years? Right? We're in this constant like more. Oftentimes, to be able to do a new thing, we have to let go of other things, right? Doesn't mean it was bad, doesn't mean it was wrong, just that is the thing that we are retiring. We're no longer doing that, right? We are phasing out of it. Networks. How will you achieve long-term committed partnerships, right? With your suppliers or other commercial partners. How will you join support networks? On the governance side of things, how can you make the most of, and include the most from those voices who are impacted the most by your operations, by your decisions? How will you represent those that maybe we as humans might have currently a harder way of hearing, or at least here in the US, interests, say, of the planet, right? Not to say we aren't getting signals, just that we may not be listening. Which processes can you set up from a governance perspective that ensure that these societal and ecological goals are prioritized in decisions? Thinking about ownership, right? So which stakeholders could be part owners? How could voting rights be relooked at? Last time around, we looked at some example companies on that front. How can ownership be structured to prioritize the most pressing societal or ecological goals that are relevant, that are strategic for your business? From the finance side of things, how and when should margins be adapted? All right, think about transformative ideas. I know we're talking about being more supportive on that side. What about other ones that are like, no, we're actually going to increase the bar here, so we have a bit of a premium that we can work with and be more supportive for the more transformative ideas? How can reinvestment be enabled? Should there be a dividend cap? What is a fair return for investors when you think about their exits, if needed, how can they be managed in a way that it protects your purpose? Lots of case studies in business around those. And finally, how will your purpose be prioritized in situations where it competes with financial goals? Teaser on that one, there is always competition for financial goals. So think about hey, how are you already making those decisions? How are you already making those trade-offs? What wins out, how and why? What can you build on? What can you tap into there? So this is eventually what this future design map will look like. We're going to use those sticky notes to identify some green sticky notes. So again, identify the changes that you want to see. We did this a little bit last time, but we're going to build it out a little bit more this time around. I'll be far more explicit because folks were asking for more time and like, okay, how do we actually implement a change? How do we work this through in our business, right? So what are those proposed changes? We'll do in green. In orange, we're going to just call out how does it help, right? What are all of the things that it would help you do, from the impact on the business as well as the impact on society and on ecology as well. And then finally, we'll use the off purple sticky notes to identify some important considerations, right? So how do you actually implement this, right? Like, what do the details look like? To give an example of how you might look through this, right? Again, to keep it to the good side of things. Thinking through there, if they had before, transformative idea was pay suppliers enough to enable a living wage, right? and they had a number of enablers, they had a number of blockers, among them being short-term contracts, right? And so thinking about their networks, they would bake in long-term commitment with prices to enable the cost of sustainable production, right? And they would also tack on some things from the finance perspective. They would tackle some things from the board perspective, right? Okay, how does this help, right? It's deep partnership with key suppliers, right? That assures security of supply plus enables social and ecological goals, right? And then, okay, how do you do that? Let's make that practical, right? Start thinking around, if you're doing currently 1-year orders, could you do 1-year contracts? Could you do 5-year contracts, right? And bake in there some type of minimum pledge, right? For maybe not everybody, but at least the top 10 priority suppliers, right? And do those in ways where the prices are covering the cost of sustainable production, right? Right now, a lot of those costs are borne by society or borne by the planet, which again, borne by society. So how do you bake those more into things? So think about those as examples. With that, I'm going to pause the screen share. And we'll go ahead and okay, so that was good fun. Got some good creativity in there, and don't worry, again, we will send out copies of those to participants, so you have the ideas. If you didn't happen to get your own ideas captured down. The next bit here, the next ideas is to, okay, great, we've come up with some interesting ideas, Chris. We've gone through these iterations. How do we actually implement this in our business, right? Like, how do we share these ideas with others? How do we plan for this going forward? Right. And this is where we bring all of those ideas that we've been working through together. We summarize everything here in a way that is going to be more helpful, right? We've seen for the past 30, 50 years, if you think from a climate perspective, that numbers themselves don't tell a story, numbers themselves aren't persuasive. We're humans, we need stories, right? We appreciate the narrative. And so if you're trying to propose a business change, if you're trying to, let alone something that is a fundamental deep design of the business change, we have to do that. So we have to not only back that up with data, we have to back that up with a story that engages and captures people, right? And how will you navigate through that, using and tying together everything that we've worked through in today's conversation, and think back through what we went through last time around as well. So with that, you'll see a couple of the different Canvas resources. We'll go through this one here in a minute. But again, at the end of the day, you want to link in your why, right? So thinking about just the broader stuff going on in the market, in the world, in the economy. How are you having a positive or negative impact on either bringing humanity within that safe and just space for us to thrive, or pushing us into overshoot or shortfall, and vice versa? How is what's currently going on in society or ecologically, how is that having an impact on the business? What kind of risks or situations is that creating, right? Be very clear in your why, right? And put it in that kind of context of doughnut economics, right? For that safe and just space to thrive. Try and move away from that language of growth at all costs, because if you take a parallel, just as an example for other things, if you think in other living systems, if you were to go to your doctor, if you go to a hospital and they say like, oh yeah, I've got a growth, that might be a very bad thing, right? Like talking about growth is not always good. Talking about thriving is really hard to have anything wrong with that, right? So how do we get to that safe and just space to thrive, right? Like tap into that why, right? What is that why for you, for your business? Bring in from there that transformative, that regenerative idea, right? And so these are going to be those green stickies that we did either today or in the one in January. And then finally, how to do that. These are those purple ones, right? Like how do you actually go about implementing that? What's the specific tactical thing that we're going to do tomorrow or come Monday, right? What are we going to start doing? What are we going to look at, or what are we going to let go of? So for these, we do have 2 of the 3 stickies already done, right? So the green and purple ones we were just working on here a moment ago. The Y, right? That one, the next set of stickies, we did not do one particularly specifically on that one, but we did give voice to it here at the beginning, the top of today's conversation. Everyone had the fast forwards on at that point, so I thought we would be good on it. But we'll make sure to capture that here for everybody. So with that, I'm going to stop that screen share and see if cool. All right. And again, for those who are not necessarily of the writing variety, the intents of these are for them to be there for you, right? So if it is helpful just for you to do a short video selfie, right? Or to whatever way works best for you, back of a napkin. The idea being that complement your data with story, right? Finally, at the end of the day, as we wrap up here of these 2 sessions that we've gone through in Doughnut Design for Business, we've really honed in a couple of different ways to try and tease out what is the most transformative idea that would enable you in your business, whatever organization you're in, to not only contribute to belong in a regenerative and distributive future. Now, again, these transformative ideas are about making changes of deep design of your business, of your organization, right? This is going to take some entrepreneurial can-do spirit. Make sure that you retain that, right? Alongside that conviction that you need your why to transform your business, right? And like any other good entrepreneurial endeavor, know that this is an iterative process, right? We need to make sure that we keep learning as we go and learn as you go. The question that has really been out there for most of the 2020 so far has been, can business help bring humanity into the safe and just space for humanity to thrive? Okay, it's up to us, right? It's time for us to find that out. So, with that, I would really love to give some acknowledgments to the Doughnut Economics Action Lab and all of the people and stakeholders that they involved in bringing that tool together. Again, we'll make sure to share this out so that folks have it later for access. And again, if you are doing anything at all in communicating about your efforts, please do not say, we're a Doughnut-aligned business. It's just nothing. Do check out Doughnut Economics Action Lab. They have some very great policies for how to engage and how to communicate around this and how to think about it. They are very concerned with the integrity of the tool. So do respect the way that they're requesting folks to engage with it in thinking. With that, would love to pause this here. We'll do some brief questions among us here in the audience and let folks get back to bringing action home. So we'll drop into the chats again for folks to ways to register for the March webinar, which is going to come up again here in just a few short weeks. And again, do stay tuned via newsletter or social media for us for ways to stay involved. With that, go ahead and